This is Pro Wrestling Illustrated, a love letter to independent wrestling from Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I am one of your hosts, PWI Editor-in-Chief Kevin McElvaney. With me here, as always, the Good Witch, the Conduit of Karma, the Divine Darling, Kaia McKenna. Kaia, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Kevin. How are you doing?
Good. Keeping on the grind, and appropriately for a second episode running, we have
Definitely
someone very prominently represents pro wrestling grind, and that is Mike Skyros. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here to talk about Pro Wrestling Grind.
Yeah, so the last time we did anything indeed on this show, we talked to Delmy Exo ahead of the big anniversary show at which you were to defend your Pro Wrestling Grind championship against Matt Makowski. This was a highly anticipated match, and we're here talking to you today because the match is about to be available for everyone to watch. Is that right?
Yeah, the match is coming up on Tuesday. It's going to be live in the evening around 7 p.m. on IWTV.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always good to check out. One thing I really like about when an event goes up, whether it's live in the moment or if it's the premiere of the event, is that people can kind of watch it as a community for the first time. They can go online, they can tweet about it, they can post on their social media platform of choice about it. And I know this is a particularly exciting show. So, I mean, let's just talk about it right off the bat, because Matt Makowski he's been gunning for this for a while. What can fans expect when they tune in and watch this match?
So Matt presents a very unique style and a very unique challenge for me as a champion. When you get in the ring with him, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's been practicing mixed martial arts for a very long time. The precision and the speed that he does techniques that other people may do in the ring is completely different and completely unique to anything I've been in the ring with before. It doesn't hit you until it hits you, and he hits me quite a lot in this match. It was tough, so everyone that tunes in can see me try to solve that puzzle.
I was going to say, how do you not only physically but mentally prepare for an opponent like that has that sort of tenure in combat sports? And that's not something you come across too often in independent wrestling, right? It's kind of a unique case.
Yeah, obviously, like any other title defense, I have to be at the top of my game. But with Matt specifically, I have to try to not play his game. There's an ego part of every champion to be like, I'm champion for a reason. I should just go right at him. But that's a dumb move, in my opinion. With him, I have to focus on what my strengths are. I have a big experience advantage. And honestly, whether the fans there like it or not, I am willing to do whatever I have to hold on to that championship. And I think if you take a look at that match, I do a lot of that.
Well, the game certainly changes once you become a champion, because you do everything you can to acquire that championship. And you might have a thought like, I'm going to be a noble, valiant fighting champion. But in the back of your head, there's always, I'm going to do what I need to do to keep this title. No one's taking it from me, right? Like that mentality doesn't a little bit, but it's the same hunger.
Yeah, and whether people want to admit it or not, wins and losses are the thing that matter the most. And maybe this month, next month, when the broadcast is still fresh, people are going to remember, oh, Skyros did this or this to gain the advantage or whatever in the match. But as time goes on, all people are going to remember is that I was a champion. I got in there with Matt Makowski, one of the baddest dudes going today, and I won.
Yeah, I appreciate. Let me just say thank you for saying that wins and losses matter. So, I mean, we have things like...
Yes, oh my gosh, thank you. I say this all the time, and people are like, no, they definitely matter, because it doesn't matter how talented you are, how good looking you are, how much finesse you have in that ring, how much ground you're covering. If you're not winning, who cares? Like, we're all here to win.
Yeah.
And that's not to say you can't lose a match here or there. But there's a reason that undefeated streaks are so memorable, so important, how they're a signal of someone becoming something bigger. There's a reason that even like if someone is suddenly elevated into a position they were not in before, sometimes the fans go, huh, and they hesitate a little bit. It's because there's this perception that if you beat people, even though like we all know the nature of the business at this point. And if you're watching this and you don't, just send me a message. I'll explain it.
You're right.
But no, it still is about perception and storytelling, and the wins and losses matter. But this was not the only story being told on that show, and I think
No.
certainly like the major attraction with the title on the line. But could you talk a little bit about what else people can expect to see if they tune in?
Yeah, two matches that really stood out that I watched on the show personally were right at the beginning of the show, Colin Delaney and A Game. They tore it down. As much as I'm not a fan of A Game right now, personally, professionally, he's killing it. I've been in the ring with him. He's on the rise. And if anyone knows anything about Colin, he's kind of one of the more unsung guys in the indies right now. He is incredible, and he shows it in that match. And then later in the card, there is a match between a new team we have at Grind, the Memory Museum, and a really established tag team now in the main event. And main event is Pro Wrestling Grind refers to them. They're our tag team, and they always bring excitement. They bring high flying. They bring a little bit of everything in terms of like really solid, really exciting tag team wrestling. And they got in there with the new guys, and the new guys kept up.
Speaking of new people and people keeping up and new challengers, who do you see coming down the road to challenge you at Pro Wrestling Grind? Who's really stepping up, and who would you be willing to get in the ring with and give them a shot?
Yeah. So the cool thing about Grind is I don't have to book anything. I just step in the ring, and whoever they put me against or who they announce, I'm willing to take on that challenge. But we have a very solid and consistent core roster, and there's a lot of people that have publicly, whether we put out this little Grind pamphlet, there are a lot of people taking shots at me in there. Yeah, it's awesome. Guys that have said stuff: Travis Huckabee, Perry Von Vicious. Ryan Mooney has built a lot of momentum. I'm sure him and I will cross paths soon. I'm sure if A Game keeps winning, he's going to get another shot at me. He'll lose, but he'll get another shot at me. And Perry Von Vicious in Japan said very blatantly that he is not only coming back to beat me, he's coming back to crush me and take my belt. So a lot of those core guys on the roster have been building momentum and feel like they're taking a shot. And then the first champion, Jay Freddy, right when I won the belt, said he'll be waiting in the wings. So I gotta stay on my toes,
So how do you stay on your toes? Like, so what do you do to stay, like, does it involve like taking more bookings between these grind shows? Is it stepping up your training, watching tape? Like, what's your way of staying?
Yeah. So I try to be in a ring as often as possible. A lot of people talk about when they take their bookings, quality over quantity, and I think there is something to that, because you don't want to put yourself in compromising positions, especially as a champion. But I'm the type of person where I am better the more consistently I'm in the ring. So whether it's getting in extra training matches, getting in just extra bookings on weekends on an odd day like a Thursday or a Friday, I just like being in the ring, and I'm at my best when I just have that muscle like super fresh, super tense, and I'm just trying to stay as consistent as possible, be at the top of my game. Another thing that helps me too, that guys like Daniel Garcia was really big on this, even though he's much younger than me and much newer than me. Everyone knows how incredible he is, but he watches tape on every single opponent he wrestles, and every match I have coming up, I started doing that, and it made such a huge difference just going into the match. So those are two things I really try to be adamant on.
I'm going to echo the watching tape thing, because I was out with an injury for a very long period of time.
Yes.
Where I could not physically get in the ring to train, but I consumed so much wrestling in that time off that I felt like I came back a better wrestler right off the bat, despite not having actually been in the ring for 9 months. It makes a difference. And I also feel, and maybe you can weigh on this as well, when I wrestle opponents who practice that, there's a difference versus opponents who don't. Like, you definitely have an edge on the people who are not as committed to being a student of the game. Like, you can tell as soon as you step in the ring with people who's watching tape, who's in the ring training 5 days a week, who's hitting the gym, who's always trying to be better, stronger, faster, and who's just kind of there.
Yeah, and there's unicorns out there for sure that they can come off the street after not wrestling for like a month or two and be amazing. But I think most people you can tell when they're fresh, and you can tell when they're like in tune with what they're doing. And you're right, it makes a huge difference.
And I mean,
I've always been a little. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Kaia.
So I've always been a little envious of people who are just very natural at professional wrestling, because I feel like some people just take to it like a duck to water. And I, despite having an athletic background of my own, I had to work very, very, very hard to be decent at professional wrestling.
Yeah.
But I think that when you have to put that extra work in, you have an appreciation per se that others do not. Like when you put that time into watching tape, you start to appreciate the business in a way that people who don't do that, they don't have that appreciation, you know? They don't see it from that standpoint.
Yeah. I can absolutely relate, because I was not a natural at this. I was very much a late bloomer, a slow learner, and I train relentlessly still. I'm still at the same school I started with all the time. I'm jumping in at places like Ground Zero Wrestling in Rochester, trying to get extra reps with guys like Colin. And it's tough. Like, it's frustrating sometimes. You see people out there that are super young, super new, and they just get it. You're like, why couldn't that be me? But not everyone's path is the same. So you kind of have to figure out, like, okay, I have to do this to grow. And I'm still a believer that even if you're not a natural, like, if you put in the work, like, you can maximize your talent.
Well, absolutely, because when you're putting in all that work, it's like riding a bike with training wheels, and then maybe one day, like, you hit the curb and the wheel pops up and you're off to the races. And then everything just kind of falls into place because your mental game is so strong. When your body physically catches up with it, like, you're unstoppable, you know? Whereas other people have to make up their shortcomings mentally because they didn't watch the tape, they didn't study, they didn't seek out guidance, they didn't go train at other places like you're doing, you know, diversify your moveset, diversify your skills. So it's really cool. You're setting yourself up for a very long championship reign doing that, you know? Be ready to take on anyone who comes down the pike.
Well, I had to, this spot wasn't mine. This wasn't given to me. When I arrived at the company, they weren't like, this is the guy that's going to be champion. I very much stole the role as champion, and I'm very proud of that, because we have a huge roster, we have a talented roster, and we have a lot of guys that I think could be great champions one day. But I made it my mission to become, because I say it in promos all the time, I love Pro Wrestling Grind, and that's legitimate. And the fact that I get to hold this is so awesome to me right now.
Someone rings the bell.
Oh, shiny.
You fought so hard.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. But again, like, I took it right out from everyone's noses, and I'm very happy to be the champion. I plan on being a champion for a very long time. It's funny. It's way easier people say, like, in different ways, it's easier to get to the top than to stay at the top. And my goal is just to run so fast and so hard that even when I'm in first, no one can catch up to me.
Right. And I mean, it's right there in the name with Grind, and you have this roster for people. This, you know, and there's this whole idea people talk about, like, the importance of consistency, and that beating, in many cases, natural ability, because it is about wanting it to a certain extent. I think it was it a Malcolm Gladwell book? It was something about, like, the things that like people who are really just masters in their field have in common is the reps and the amount of, you know, like, okay, the Beatles did as well as they did because they had the 10,000 hours playing in the clubs.
10,000 hours.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
so there's something to that, though.
We were talking about people that just are newer, you know, and just come and they have all this opportunity right out the gate, right? And you can't figure out how it's happening, and it's frustrating when you're somebody who has been, quote unquote, grinding, right? But I have truly noticed that has a ceiling, and you cannot out Carney the grind, right? Like, you can try to take shortcuts, you can try to, you know, get other people to foot the bill for you, you can try to finesse it which way you can, right? But there is something to be said for someone who puts in time and hard work, and it might be the longer path, but it is certainly the path that has staying power. You cannot cut corners. You can't out Carney the grind. Like, there's something to be said for the grind in this business and the people who commit to doing that grind. So,
yeah, I think that's a lot of our roster too. If you look at it, it's a lot of guys that, especially in New England, you'll see, and it's nothing against any of these guys, but you see a lot of the same names on every show. So much in, like, how they used to describe ECW, I'm not saying we're ECW, but Grind is kind of the island of misfit toys where it's
Heard it here
guys who are
first.
very talented. Yeah, but haven't gotten the shine other places.
ECW is great. I enjoy
Yeah.
watching ECW. I'm
Yes,
all for
it's
it.
fantastic. Yeah,
There's
but it's
definitely a
like
place.
go ahead.
I say there's definitely a place for the ecosystem for a place like Grind that creates opportunity for
Yes.
those hustlers, for those grinders, for those people that are true students of the game that may have gotten overlooked at other places for whatever reasons, you know. And I can appreciate that space has been created because it's so important. I mean, that's how we get our eyes on people that we might not have. You know, Kevin was saying like, "Oh, who's this person? Oh, wait, hold on. They're pretty. This is pretty impressive here. Let me see what they're up to." And it's just to create those opportunities for people in wrestling that are working hard is just such noble work.
Yeah, like it's so interesting to see because look at guys like again like Mooney, like A Game, like even a guy like Travis Huckabee who's been around a long time, or I can name a bunch of people off our roster, but how
All
often
talented guys.
how often before Grind were those guys featured prominently in the Northeast in places like Mass, Connecticut, etc. Not as often as like the people you see around at other places. So, and they've been able to build off of this and get more prominent bookings and elevate their status even more, even if they were already at a high level. So, that's one of the things I think is really important about Grind is we've given the spotlight and the stage to a lot of people, including myself, that uh, didn't have that sort of spotlight before.
You know, my next and probably last question for you was what makes Grind so special, but I think you've summed it up so well right there. We want to give you a chance to plug anything else you have coming up, along with again, like where and how and when people can catch the all Grind shows, but also this anniversary show that's coming up and about to premiere. But first, Kaia, do you have anything else you want to ask our guests before we part ways here?
No, I actually really enjoyed speaking with you today, Mike. That was some great insight into pro wrestling grind, into the New England independent scene, and just into the hard work that you've put into getting where you are. I always appreciate when guests are like that. They have so much to bring to the table. They're open, they're honest, they're candid, and I really enjoyed speaking with you today.
That's really cool. I appreciate that a ton. In terms of places you can find me in the future, first and foremost, I'm going to plug it again this Tuesday on IWTV. Watch Pro Wrestling Grind Celebration Day 2 live. Tweet about it, post about it. Tell us what you think, good, bad, and different. If you hate me, if you love me, tell me. And if you want to find me anywhere else, you can find me at every Pro Wrestling Grind show until they physically stop me from coming into the building. You can find me coming up on November 18th. I'll be at Immortal Championship Wrestling tagging with my buddy Adam Stone. You can find me on the 19th at Kaiju Pro Wrestling in Connecticut. And then a lot of places are taking the Thanksgiving weekend off, which is nice. I'm going to spend that with family. And then you can find me the first weekend of December at NFW New Jersey, at Smashmaster Wrestling in Scranton, PA, and at Excite Wrestling in Binghamton, New York.
Wow, that's quite a schedule you've coming up, and you know sometimes
it's a grind.
Slowing down toward the end of the year. That is not what you're
Always
doing. In keeping with the grind, and of course, people can go back after they've watched this new Celebration Day 2. They can go back and watch previous shows. So that's a pretty awesome.
Yes, they're all there.
Watch your journey. Thank you again, Mike, for joining us. Thanks to our listeners and viewers for tuning in. Kaia, the last word goes to you. Parting words of wisdom. Anything else that you might want to share with us, with our viewers?
I think I said it in the episode, right? Like you can't out Carney the grind. Just put your nose to the grindstone and make it happen for yourself. I do think that if you stay the course, good things will come your way. So just no matter what you're going through right now, if you're feeling slighted, feeling overlooked, feeling frustrated, keep at it, stay the course, and maybe one day you'll get a title shot against Mike Skyros at Pro Wrestling Grind. Look at that shiny belt. Yeah. Love it.